Picture a scenario you have lived recently. It is 5:30 on a Friday, and you have just survived a brutal 45-hour work week. You are sitting in gridlock traffic or squeezed onto a train, but your brain is completely fried and officially offline for the day. The thought of cooking dinner feels impossible right now, so you pull out your phone to open those expensive food delivery apps. You order the pizza or burgers, and with the delivery fees and tip included, that single meal just cost you $45. You finally get home, crack open a drink to take the edge off, and sink into the couch just to shut the noise out. As you numb your mind with TV, you tell yourself the lie we all believe. I earned this treat because I worked hard. But what if I told you that mathematically, you didn't just spend $45 on dinner? You actually spent hours of your life. That pizza, the gas for your commute, and the work clothes you bought are actually hidden taxes draining your bank account. You think you earn $30 an hour, but a forensic audit of your life will prove you are actually making less than $4. If you ever wonder where your paycheck goes, keep watching, because we are exposing the accounting fraud you commit against yourself. From the moment we toss our graduation caps, society sells us the fundamental lie that our human value is defined solely by our annual salary. You celebrate an offer letter of $65,000, thinking $31 an hour is a respectable, decent living wage. But this is where we get the math wrong. Because in business, looking at revenue without expenses is exactly how companies go bankrupt. If a bakery sells $1 million in bread but spends more on flour and rent, that business is actually worth less than zero. Yet when it comes to our labor, we obsess over salary revenue while completely ignoring the brutal reality of the cost of goods sold. In this case, the product being sold is your life, energy, and time, and the true cost of selling yourself is absolutely astronomical. Let us perform a brutal audit on a hypothetical worker named James, who supposedly earns that respectable $31 every single hour. Before that money hits his account, the tax system instantly shaves his $31 down to just $24 in take-home pay. That is the easy math we expect, but now we must subtract the hidden expenses James pays just for the privilege of working. First is the commute, where James spends thousands annually on gas and insurance just to physically reach the building where he makes money. Driving 30 minutes each way creates massive wear and tear on a vehicle that he basically only owns to get to his job. Whether driving or taking the train, let us be conservative and estimate this commute costs him $4,000 right off the top. Then there is the cost of appearance, because James cannot wear sweatpants and must buy suits, dress shoes, and pay for dry cleaning. Looking professional is not a hobby, but a mandatory business expense that his employer will never reimburse him for. We are already bleeding significant money from his paycheck, and we have not even touched on the biggest expenses in his life yet. Now we enter the absolute danger zone, which I call the convenience tax, a trap that feels so completely justifiable in the moment. Because James is chained to his desk all day, he lacks the mental bandwidth to cook and buys expensive $16 salads instead. He buys that $7 latte not for the taste, but for the chemical spike needed to survive a boring meeting without passing out. He pays strangers to walk his dog and wastes money on a gym membership he is simply too exhausted to ever actually use. These represent costs that would not exist without this job, meaning he is quite literally spending his own money just to go to work. And then we arrive at the darkest category of them all, a financial black hole that we call decompression spending. This is the hard-earned money James burns specifically to numb the deep psychological pain that his stressful job inflicts on his mind. It is the high bar tab on Friday night or the impulsive credit card vacation booked just to escape his reality for a week. It is the endless Amazon boxes arriving at his door filled with useless things he bought just to get a quick hit of dopamine. We are essentially spending our salary in a desperate attempt to heal the physical and mental damage that the 9-to-5 grind causes. When you sit down and add up the taxes, the car, the lunches, and the numbness, James is not taking home $65,000. After paying all these hidden lifestyle taxes, his net real income is actually closer to a terrifying $35,000 a year. But hold on. Because we are only halfway through the equation, since your true wage is a function of money divided by time. And just like we overestimate the money we make, we drastically underestimate the total amount of time we are actually sacrificing. If you look closely at your employment contract, HR claims you work 40 hours, but that is actually a bald-faced lie. When the alarm screams at 6:30, James wakes up not to enjoy life, but to shower, shave, and iron a shirt. This 30 minutes of grooming is labor performed strictly for the employer, unpaid prep time that steals his morning sleep. Then he drives 30 minutes, transporting the equipment, which is himself, to the job site without getting paid for the shipping. Then comes the lunch hour, which is technically off the clock, but he is physically held captive by the office radius. He cannot go home or play with his kids, so this is not free time. It is actually unpaid standby time. After the commute home, there is the post-work crash where he stares at the wall just to decompress from the stress. He spends time venting about his boss or checking emails, unable to truly relax because his brain is still at work. All of this constitutes what I call shadow work. Time that belongs to the job, but the job refuses to pay for. If you add the grooming, commuting, and worrying, James is not dedicating 40 hours, but closer to 60 hours a week. So now that we have all the variables, let us perform the real math to calculate his true real hourly wage. I need to give you a fair warning before we proceed. The number we are about to reveal is going to hurt. Okay, brace yourself and take a deep breath, because we are finally ready to perform the final calculation. We take that painfully whittled down net real income of $35,000, which is the only money James actually keeps. We divide that number by the inflated true hours, representing the nearly 3,000 hours of life he sacrificed. When you finally punch those numbers into a cold calculator, that respected $31 salary evaporates and dissolves into nothing. Suddenly, you realize James is not making $31. He is barely scraping by on 11 or maybe even 8. In high-stress cities like New York, he is mathematically earning less than the teenager flipping burgers down the street. Why is this true? Because that teenager walks to work for free and wears a uniform provided by the boss. Most importantly, when he clocks out at 5, he leaves his stress at the fry station and is truly free. This is the reality of what I call the work scam. And you have been playing this game for years. You have been tricked into running a low-margin business where you are the product, selling yourself at a total loss. I know this sounds incredibly depressing, and you might feel stupid for realizing your job sucks. But stay with me. The reason we do this brutal math is not to make you depressed, but to make you righteously angry. Once you finally see your real hourly wage, I promise that you will never look at a price tag the same way. This brings us to a concept from the legendary book, Your Money or Your Life, which is the absolute antidote to being broke. Let us assume you run the numbers we just discussed, and it turns out your true real hourly wage is only $10. Now, imagine you walk into a store and see a new pair of shoes with a price tag reading $100. But your brain needs to run a translation program, realizing that is not money but actually 10 full hours of your life. That represents 10 hours of sitting in gridlock traffic and dealing with passive-aggressive emails from Karen in accounting. That is 10 hours of missing your child's soccer game, traded away forever just to put some rubber on your feet. You must ask yourself if those sneakers are worth 10 hours of your specialized suffering, and suddenly the answer is almost always no. This math also exposes the terrifying trap known as the golden handcuffs, where we chase promotions while ignoring the exponentially higher costs. Let us say you finally get promoted to manager with a $10,000 raise, and you think it is time for champagne. But wait, because now you work late every night, ordering expensive takeout dinners and buying nicer suits just to fit the role. Your cortisol levels skyrocket, forcing you to book expensive luxury resort vacations just so you can feel like a human being again. You might be shocked to find that after a big promotion, your real hourly wage actually goes down instead of going up. You are processing money like a high-volume laundromat, but you are keeping less of it while giving up more of your life. There is also a hidden opportunity cost lurking beneath the surface here that is actually quite terrifying for you to consider. When you mindlessly spend your hard-earned money on commuting, convenience food, and happy hours, you aren't just losing cash today. You are actually committing a crime against your future self by robbing your own bank account of massive compound interest. Take that $5 morning latte you buy every single day simply because you are too tired to brew coffee at home. It seems harmless, but $5 a day invested over 30 years at 7% returns nearly $200,000. Let that sink in, because you aren't just drinking a cup of bean water, you are sipping a house down payment. You are drinking away 5 years of early retirement and literally swallowing your own freedom, one paper cup at a time. And here is the real kicker. The entire economic system relies on you being far too exhausted to ever do this math. The modern economy is specifically designed to keep you trapped in a permanent state of low-grade burnout and mental exhaustion. They rely on you being a passive consumer of your own life because when you are tired, your willpower breaks down. When you are exhausted, you do not negotiate and you do not cook. You simply surrender and swipe the credit card. They want you to look at your gross salary and feel rich, so you sign leases on luxury apartments you never use. They want you financing luxury cars you cannot afford, just to impress people at the office whom you secretly hate. You are trapped in a vicious loop of needing the job to pay for the things you bought to tolerate the job. So what is the actual solution here, and how exactly do we manage to break this completely rigged mathematical equation? The answer is not to quit your job tomorrow and vanish into the woods, because we must remain realistic about paying our bills. The solution is to ruthlessly optimize your real hourly wage, making efficiency your new metric for success instead of gross income. Negotiating just 2 days of working from home can give you a massive raise without the company paying you a single dime. Start meal prepping and ignore expensive outfits because every single work expense you cut is $1 of pure financial freedom. The biggest shift is psychological, where you treat your labor like a smart business focused on increasing profit margins, not just revenue. Your life is the business, and your margin is the time and money left over to actually exist as a human being. If you make 6 figures but spend 95% of it while working 80 hours, you are a failing business waiting to collapse. But if you make $50,000, spend only 20, and work 30 hours, you are a highly profitable and robust enterprise. This is where negative epiphany turns into positive action, so I want you to sit down this Sunday morning to run the numbers. Calculate your commute, taxes, and decompression spending, then divide your net pay by the total hours you commit to the job. Write that specific real wage number on a sticky note and stick it right onto the front of your plastic credit card. Before buying junk, ask if it is worth 4 hours of life, because that mental friction saves more money than any budget app. We live in an era where time is the ultimate currency. The rich buy it, while the poor sell it at a discount. Audit your life, cut the vampire costs, and build the gap between income and expenses, because that gap is where your freedom lives. If this made you rethink your paycheck, share it with a tired coworker so we can math our way out of this trap together.